Today we're redesigning Gigtown, a cool little website that connects musicians with venue owners that want some live entertainment. The classic two-sided marketplace. There's so much potential for a site like this, but the current site just lacks that little bit of pizzazz that you'd expect from a site like this. So let's get in there, break it down, and then build it up stronger than it was before. We're not going to change the color schema a bit, just broaden the palette slightly so that we can add more color in there without all the saturation. We will be changing the font though. Proxima Nova is just not going to cut it in 2024. It's boring and stale, and we need something modern that pops a little more. So we'll be using the Design All-Star Eric Kennedy's new font, Figtree, which checks all of our boxes and is extremely easy to use because it's a variable width font. Check the description if you want to use Figtree in your future projects. As always, we'll be starting with a site header. The overlaid and styled text on the logo makes the logo quite hard to work with. So we're going to remove the text altogether, add a little bit of flair into the logo, and then type out the company name instead. The header links are an odd gray color. They kind of look disabled, and there's really no room for any other links than those that are already here right now. So we'll get rid of these and replace them with two really cool drop downs that have essentially infinite room for even more nav links. The main call to action button seems to use what appears to be a default blue. It doesn't really match the brand theme at all. So we're going to get rid of that altogether and introduce the primary call to action with a nice saturated black button. We'll add another button to the header for the second part of the marketplace, the artists themselves, and of course a third call to action to let the users log in. Whenever you have three different call to actions, it's very common to use the pattern I've used here, where you have a primary button that pulls the most visual attention, an outline button which pulls the second most and is usually the second most important, and then finally just a text link, which your eye goes to last. And note that we're also using rounded buttons now, and that's very intentional. Really rounded corners help to make brands feel much more playful and approachable, and that's what we're going for with Gigtown. Alright, moving on to the hero here, the existing site gets a little bit ahead of itself. They're already starting to show local gigs in my area, but it's too soon for that. They've missed something absolutely critical that has to happen first. Do you know what it is? Exactly. We need to explain what problem this website solves for me. Why should I care? Why should I scroll even farther down this page? The map is a good idea though, so we'll come back to it later. But for now, let's just start over. We'll add a big bold hero statement here that clearly explains the unique value proposition of Gigtown. Find local musicians for your venue or event. Beautiful, crisp, clear, and to the point without a single unnecessary word. And people really don't like to read on the internet, so anything you can do to ease that burden is going to be appreciated. So we'll highlight the main part of the message here with a subtle orange background color. This also helps to break up the black and white monotony that we've kind of built into the UI so far. A little splash of color goes a long way to making a site just appear more visually interesting. We'll also add a little subtitle to give a little bit more context. And of course, the two standard call to actions will be included here as well, and we'll emphasize the one that's more economically important to Gigtown first. Then I'd also like to add a little bit of social proof just below those call to action buttons. Now it's very unlikely that anyone is going to click a call to action in a hero section before they know anything about your company. But if they do, it'll be because of the social proof. And finally, this is the hero section of the site. This is the first impression that most people are going to have of Gigtown. So we need to do something that kind of blows their socks off a little bit and gets them emotionally invested in browsing further. But as much as I'd like to, we can't just put dancing elves everywhere on the screen. It needs to be relevant, and it needs to subtly try and communicate the value proposition of Gigtown. Now remember, there's two markets here, the artists and the customers. But there's one thing that overlaps between both of them, and that's knowing that there's a large community of musical professionals working on Gigtown already. So we can communicate this by showing a whole bunch of profiles from Gigtown behind the hero section, animating from side to side. This sends the message, hey, there are a ton of musicians on here, you can find your community, or you can definitely find an artist for your venue. This is the sort of hero section that gets websites to convert. If we just stopped here and didn't change anything else about the site, they would probably see like a 2 to 3% increase in people clicking the call to action. But we're not just gonna stop here, are we? That's right, moving on to the next section, there's one other thing that I felt was totally missing on the existing Gigtown site, and it was some kind of explanation of the process. Gigtown is kind of a unique service, so I don't really know how it works. If I'm hitting this website for the first time, I'd like an explanation of what the process might look like for someone like me. So we can solve this by putting a simple little 3-block how it works section just below the hero. But remember, people don't read on the internet, so we can't just put paragraphs here. We need to put a concise header, and even better, an icon that explains what you're doing functionally as well in each of these. So now that we've explained why I should keep scrolling and explained what I have to do to get value from the site, now it's appropriate to answer the question, well, just how many gigs are available on this site? That's right, we're bringing back that juicy map section from before to show all the local gigs nearby the user's location. We'll start by listing out all the venues where live music is happening in the near future. This gives us a recency and locality bias, which gets people to think, hey, this is actually real and happening near me, which gets them to relate to the product, which ultimately gets them to sign up. Then we'll slap that big map component right back in there, but make sure it's constrained to a container unless the user clicks the full screen button. We'll also slap some cheeky bonus events just underneath the map itself. This gives Gigtown another way to monetize their site and also gives us a little more room to display events on the left. Now, if I'm looking for music, I'm probably not just looking for music generally. There's a big difference between a live DJ and someone playing a banjo, right? So I'll probably need some way to filter between the different categories that I could potentially be searching for, and we'll put that at the top there. And finally, there's one big problem with this map component, and that's, what if there's no events near me? If my live location currently doesn't support any events, why are we even showing the map of this area to the user? Instead, we should present them with a list of locations that we know are working through Gigtown and just present that to the user in a sidebar. We can auto-select one of them based on their location if they'd like, but I think this is a much more stable solution. Next up, we're going to feature the artists a little bit more. The artists are ultimately what draws other customers to the site, so we really should be emphasizing them a little more. In order to do that, we're going to need a sexy artist card. First off, we're going to add a nice big profile picture in there to anchor the entire profile to a human being. Next, we'll emphasize what sorts of instruments they play. As someone who might hire an artist, I really do need to know if this person plays the banjo or the guitar or the violin, right? That's important to me. In the main content area, we'll add their name and relevant metadata, things like their availability and their location. We'll also add a little description so that prospects can get to know these artists a little bit more. And of course, we'll feature some videos from their past live performances to really let customers connect with these artists as opposed to just looking at their name in a directory. For the call to actions, we'll try and encourage conversations by making the primary call to action just message Tony or whatever the person's name happens to be, and the secondary call to action will just push them towards their profile. We'll also add even more social proof off to the right so that I know that I'm hiring someone that has worked through the platform before, they're not going to ghost me, everything's legit. Now that we've got the card sorted, we're going to slap 2 of these bad boys in there, and then we'll also put a whole bunch of category filters below here so that if I'm interested specifically in vocalists, I can click on that and browse the gallery there. Now, of course, for any service anywhere where I'm exchanging value for money, social proof is king. I need to know that some other human has used your service before and had a positive experience. That is ultimately what gets people to click that sign up button. So we're going to put a big testimonial section here. And we'll just add 8 testimonials in immediately here. But remember, people don't read, so we'll highlight the most important takeaway from each testimonial. Now, normally I would try and feature individual businesses and the performers that have been there in these testimonials, but I wanted to keep this really simple because at the end of the day, we have to support testimonials from both customers that have hired artists and the artists that have worked on Gigtown themselves. Remember, this landing page is trying to get 2 different kinds of people to convert, which is always a challenge. But since we are trying to handle both of those types of testimonials in the same block, we'll add a little toggler at the top that lets users swap between the contexts. Finally, we can add a little bit more third-party social proof by listing all of the outlets in which Gigtown's been featured. Very cool. I cannot stress how important social proof is. Once you've got a clear, unique value proposition, social proof is the second biggest reason why people will not convert. You need good testimonials. Social proof is the strongest lever you have with your customers. Finally, if the user scrolled this far, they might be somewhat interested, so we'll hit them with another call to action. This call to action will be essentially identical to the one in the hero. It's just conveniently at their fingertips so they don't have to scroll back up. But we're going to put a captivating picture of one of the guitarists on GigTown over to the right and then indicate that this is an actual person on GigTown with their little profile badge. Imagery like this is very in style right now, and it does a lot to really kind of draw you in and make you want to engage with a particular piece of content. And that's it. Of course, this is my personal creation here, but I really do think if they took this exact design and just implemented it as their new UI, GigTown would see their signups skyrocket. It's just so much more aligned with the kind of buying process that a customer goes through when they're looking to hire someone for their local event. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below if there's anything you would have tweaked. And of course, if you want to binge some more juicy redesigns, there's a playlist right here for you to sink your teeth into. Hope you enjoy, and I'll see you guys next week.